is up, and it's good.
You're listening to The Extra Point, hosted by Phil Ruskin. Welcome.
So I'm out. So it's just me again tonight. No, I'm kidding. He had something come up. Totally get it. But I will be here tonight taking you guys through some second round rookies. I will be answering questions in the chat. Tonight is one of those nights where if you've got a question, it is getting answered. Throw it in the chat. Always love to see my guy Rasta in there. Rasta, miss hosting shows with you, brother. I hope you are doing well. I know we were chatting about some stuff earlier today. I might bring it up. I'm not going to say the other names, but I might bring it up since you had some good questions earlier about some trade targets. And y'all know we love trading on Dynasty. Look, it's pretty simple. I think that the NFL news is ramping up. Free agency is, I won't say winding down, but it is definitely quiet. And we are definitely into the deep research for these rookies. Look, guys, in one quarterback leagues and even in Superflex, the first 4 picks are going to go like this: Love, Tate, Tyson, Lemon. I know the order is going to change. We'll talk about that as we get closer, but that's the first 4 off the board. If you're in a Superflex league, we're going to go ahead and add Fernando Mendoza to that mix. Those are the first 5 picks. I project right now that it's going to be Omar Cooper Jr. is getting a lot of first round buzz. He's getting mocked by all of the NFL pundits and so-called experts in the first round now. So Omar Cooper Jr., KC Concepcion, Denzel Boston, and Kenyon Sadiq. And that's going to take us up to the 108, maybe 109, depending on your format. Because again, in Superflex, Mendoza is going to be drafted. So what we're talking about is really picks 10, 11, 12, and that's where we're going to start the discussion tonight. I know the show is called Second Round Rookie Picks. I get that, but the reality is that the pool of players we're talking about is most likely going to be the pool of players come April when the rookie draft actually begins. So I'm going to start here with kind of the onesie positions. Look, the onesie positions are, it's tough right now, right? Because if you look at the drop off from Fernando Mendoza, what and who is Ty Simpson, right? What and who is Carson Beck? I know there's Garrett Nussmeier who's out there, and if you're watching the Twitter sphere and you're watching videos, look, all these guys had phenomenal pro days. That's what they're supposed to do. They're running around in t-shirts. There's no pressure in their face. They're launching 70-yard bombs, and it looks cool. But Anthony Richard was launching 80-yard bombs and hitting the ceiling and broke the combine, and you don't want him on your fantasy team as much as I love the kid and as much as I want him to do well because he's a Gator. The reality is we have to fish and cut bait, and sometimes we got to cut quarterbacks. So the buzz right now is that Ty Simpson is the, quote, best quarterback in the class. I don't know. Maybe not. Here's what I do know, and you guys know if you listen to this show, if you watch this show, I want to give you guys fact and I want to give you data because that's how I make a lot of decisions, and honestly, it's how you should be making a lot of your decisions too. I'm not saying don't go out and get your favorite player. If you're a Detroit Lions fan and you want to trade the world to get Gibbs on your team, fine, trade for Gibbs. Gibbs is the number 1, number 2 running back, but I still think that you at some point have to be objective and sometimes a little subjective and use the data to make some of these decisions, especially in tiebreakers. Ty Simpson has 15 starts under his belt. I'm not sitting here saying he's a bad quarterback. I just don't know that he's going to be a starting quarterback in this league. And if he is, for how long? And so what you see in the NFL right now is teams are going away from project quarterbacks, the Anthony Richardsons of the world, the Jalen Milrose of the world. Sure, they're athletic freaks and they can do incredible things, but can they read a defense? Can they make accurate passes? Anthony Richardson lost his job not because he wasn't an athletic freak. He scored a ton of rushing touchdowns and he scored fantasy points when he did play. The kid can't make a pass. So my questions around Ty Simpson are this. Number 1, is 15 starts on large enough sample size for an NFL team to say, we're going to make you your starter? Last year, the answer to that question would have been yes. Right? JJ McCarthy did not have a lot of starts under his belt. He was the number, I think, 9 overall, 11 overall pick. Doesn't matter, but he went to the Vikings super early. I don't have the draft status in front of me. Somebody, if you're in the chat, throw that in there so I can get that out there. But now JJ McCarthy's job is gone. They're signing Kyler Murray, and it's a very real possibility because they've signed Carson Wentz that they try to trade McCarthy and just cut their losses. The GM that drafted him is no longer the GM. So I think when you take a look at a player like Ty Simpson, number one, does he have the sample size? I don't know. Number two, is he going to go to the Jets? And if he goes to the Jets and he goes in the first round, then maybe we're having a different conversation because the opportunity is certainly there. You cannot tell me Geno Smith is going to be the starter for all 17 games. I don't anticipate that the Jets are going to have this coaching staff all year. I anticipate that they're going to be eliminated from the playoffs pretty early. And I think the Jets and the Cardinals and maybe the Dolphins, sadly, are going to be the 3 teams that are vying for the number 1 overall pick. We are going to talk about the 27 quarterbacks. We're going to talk about them, but I'm going to mention them a little bit tonight in the 2-minute drill. So I think it's very possible if Ty Simpson goes to the Jets, he's going to rise up boards in Superflex. He's going to be at the 10, 11, 12 spot, whether he deserves to be or not, because people need quarterbacks in Superflex. And I started this show by saying we talked about the first 8 or 9 picks that are not guaranteed, but probably fairly locked in. Sure, we could see some movement with draft capital, but Ty Simpson belongs in the second round in a Superflex, in my opinion. And I think he's going to get steamed up to the end of the first. And then that's fine. Like, if that's where you want to take the shot. But again, if he goes to the Jets and the Jets are as bad as we anticipate they're going to be, there's a very real possibility that they are taking a quarterback, quote unquote, their quarterback of the future next year. And then what? They're not going to put the number 1, 2, or 3 pick on the bench for Ty Simpson. So I think there's some risk built into Ty Simpson. I think if you want to take him at the 10 or 11, 12, as of today on March 24th, it's probably not what I would recommend. I would feel very comfortable taking him in the second round, which is why we're talking about him, but we'll see how things go. I have Carson Beck as my number 2 quarterback on my board personally, and here's why. Number one, he's, I think, a better athlete than Ty Simpson is. So from a fantasy perspective, he can run. It's like Justin Herbert running. Are they going to call designed runs for him? No. But he is somebody who can run and can give you a little bit of that. And in fantasy, even though that may not translate for the real NFL, that's what we need in fantasy. Is we need some 3-4 yard, rushing touchdowns if he calls his own number, right? And Beck can do that. The other thing I like about Beck is, again, maybe not the best quarterback in this class, but he's had 5-6 years of college. And again, a year, maybe 2 years ago, that would have been, oh, he's old. You don't want him on your team. He's not good enough. Case in point, Bo Nix. Bo Nix went to like 4 different schools. Bo Nix played against Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert's on his second contract. That's how long Bo Nix was in college. So Bo Nix has translated really well to the NFL. He's got a ton of experience. Bo Nix is a better quarterback than Carson Beck. That's not the comparison that I'm drawing. But I think if you're in the second round, in the middle to the late second round in Superflex, that's the perfect time to draft Carson Beck. I hope he gets to a landing spot where he's got a path to playing time, because I think he is a backup player. He's not going to be a starter, but he's a player that could compete. And if somebody on your team goes down, and it will happen, injuries happen all the time, that's a good player to have in the second round in a Superflex format. I don't anticipate in single quarterback Ty Simpson or Carson Beck going any earlier than the third round, but I do think it's very, very possible that they could still be on the board in the middle of the second in a Superflex draft, and that's where I would target these quarterbacks. Last guy I want to talk about at the onesie position really quickly is Eli Stowers. I really like him. I think he's a good running back. Sorry, I'm looking at the next thing. I think he's a really good tight end. He's big, he's strong, he's physical. He had good metrics at the combine. He's a good player. He's a good pass catcher. I think landing spot's going to be really interesting for him because, again, landing spot's going to be interesting for a lot of the guys we're going to talk about tonight. But, if he winds up in a place where he actually could play and get on the field right away, Stowers, especially in tight end premium, is a player that I would consider at the 10, 11, 12 in a non-TEP format. Maybe maybe at the 10, 11, 12, depending on who's still available and obviously what risers we are going to see risers here over the next couple of weeks. And right after the draft, of course, we're going to see risers because some of the guys we're going to talk about tonight are going to go higher than we think they are, and some are going to go lower. That's just the reality of what is going to become of the second round dynasty rookie picks, not the actual NFL second round. So Stowers is a guy that right now, I'll be honest, I'm targeting in the early second. If he makes it past 12 at the 201, 202, I will scoot. If Eli Stowers is available at the 201, 202, and I have those picks, he's going to wind up on a lot of my rosters. Young, athletic, it takes time for tight ends to develop. And I think if he lands in a good situation, he could be a really interesting player for Dynasty. I'd love to see him go to Baltimore. I think that would be a great landing spot for him. And you're going to say, oh, but Mark Andrews just got a contract. Mark Andrews has had a contract, and Mark Andrews is not this coaching staff's tight end. So I think it's very possible Mark Andrews finishes up this contract and Stowers gets in the mix more and more. Mark Andrews has had some injury history, of course, as we get into the later stages of his career. And you know what? If Stowers takes a year or two to develop, but then becomes the guy for Baltimore in Jesse Minter's team, I'm very okay with that. There's a lot of projections right now that Kenyon Sadiq will wind up at number 19 overall to the Panthers. Sure, could happen. It's also very possible Sadiq goes earlier than that. So if Stowers winds up, if the Panthers are leaning tight end and Stowers winds up with the Panthers, I think that would be a slam dunk back of the first round, especially in tight end premium, but even in non-TEP, I would take Eli Stowers there as well. Let's talk about some running backs, because I think this is going to be a draft where you are going to second and third round, especially third round. You should clean up these running backs. You should scoop as many of these guys we're going to talk about up tonight. I think it's going to be a cautionary tale from last year where you have Caleb Johnson and RJ Harvey going in the end of the first round. Ultimately, I'm not sure what RJ Harvey's trade market is right now. I don't think there is one, which is why I say I'm not sure what it is. But Caleb Johnson has no trade market. I mean, he has none. So I think it's going to be really difficult for me personally. I just don't see this as the strongest running back class. It is Love, and it is a huge drop off. One of the things that I think scares me, one of the things I think is upsetting to me right now, is that there is no clear RB2 in this class. There's no consensus across the board. I know a lot of guys like Jonah Coleman, a lot of guys like Jadarian Price. I see Emmett Johnson's name still being tossed around as the RB2 in this class. So I think when you talk about, I'm going to use a quick example here. When you talk about the big three wide receivers in this class, it's fine if you don't have a consensus on is it Tate, Tyson, or Lemon. That's fine, because all three of them should translate into fantastic wide receiver twos and probably wide receiver ones in their career. So I'm fine if you want to say, oh, well, it's Tate at the number. It's Tate as the 102 and he's the wide receiver one. Okay, fine. Lemon, fine. I don't care, because all the three of those guys look great on tape. They've got great metrics. They've got young breakout ages. Like, they're all really good players. This running back class, I said it last week and I'll say it again, it's giving off more of the Benson Brooks kind of vibes than it is the Bijan, Achans, and Gibbs sort of vibes. And I know that's a far stretch, because obviously we put Love in that category. We anticipate, I should say, putting Love in that category with the Bijan, Gibbs, and Achans. But I'm really struggling with this class. So Jonah Coleman is a really interesting prospect, right? He's a kid out of Washington. I think the Seahawks need a running back. It's very possible that they take one here in the second round. I could see them pulling the trigger on a Coleman, on a Jadarian Price. Nobody knows where these guys are going to go, but I think if you get good draft capital on some of these running backs, that's going to necessitate at least a consideration for a mid-second round pick. I've done a ton of mocks. We've talked about it a ton on this show. Kendall, my co-host, and I have talked about it ad nauseum. I think even in Superflex, you're going to see a huge wide receiver run with Love and Mendoza sprinkled in, and Sadiq sprinkled in, and Stowers. I see a comment in here from Ethan talking about Stowers had a better production profile than Sadiq. He does. He's a really good player. I like him. So I think it's very possible you see a super heavy, maybe as many as 7, 8 wide receivers in the first round, We'll throw Sadiq in there. That gives us a tight end, Love, and Mendoza. That's a quarterback. That's 10, 11 picks already. So I don't know who the RB2 is. Nobody seems to have that consensus, but someone is going to rise. I would give you that cautionary tale of RJ Harvey and Caleb Johnson. I have personally Jonah Coleman at number 2. I have Emmett Johnson at 3, and I have Jadarian Price at 4 in this class. I like Emmett Johnson a lot because he catches passes. And so I think if it's the second round and I'm on the clock and the big time wide receivers, of course, are gone, and then that next crop of wide receivers is gone, I think that's where I'm going to pull the trigger on an Emmett Johnson. To me, as of today, it's still early. A lot can change. We're a month away from the draft. But I think a lot's going to change. But today, I like Emmett Johnson's profile, right? I know he didn't run the fastest 40 time. I don't care as much about that because it's the underwear Olympics. There's nobody blocking. There's nobody running at you. You're not trying to, get into the secondary and hit a home run. Ultimately, I like the fact that he catches passes. And that's really what I'm looking for in the second round is, do you have a path to playing time? Can you give me some usable weeks as a flex option or a bye week fill in, or in case of an injury, again, that path to playing time? And then are you going to catch passes? Because obviously most of us play in PPR or at least half PPR leagues. If you're playing in a standard league, that's fine. I don't play in any, but I know there's still some folks out there that do. In a half and a full PPR, I'm almost always, unless the talent for a non-pass catching running back, a Derrick Henry, when he was coming out, for example, is just so high, sure, then you would take that player. But I like Emmett Johnson a lot. And if he gets better draft capital than Jonah Coleman does, Emmett Johnson will rise to the number 2 running back, at least on my board in this class. I talked a little bit about Jadarian Price last week and just want to reiterate this a little bit. I made this comp, and there was a lot of people in the comments that liked it. There was one guy who was not happy at all, and that's totally fine because I think what I comped was this Roschon Johnson, and I think obviously he had drafted Roschon. Roschon did not work out. He is not working out. Kyle Monungai is now, taking his job in Chicago. Here's where I'm at with Jadarian Price. I think he's a good player, and this is why I have him as a second round rookie pick. If Jadarian Price were to wind up in a situation where he could play, if he winds up in Jacksonville, right, with Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez, it's still a committee, but there will be people that will be excited about him if they use early draft capital and say, well, he's going to be the 2, or he could push Tutin to be the 1. So Jacksonville would be a really interesting spot. If Jadarian Price winds up in Seattle, and this is where I think a lot of whoever winds up in Seattle is going to get steamed up. And that's where I want to say, hold on, pump the brakes. Charbonnet is going to come back. He may not come back this season. And if he does come back this season, it's going to take him a while because the surgery was so late in the year. He's going to be probably an October return to football. And if it's October, that's probably the earliest he'll be back. But whoever winds up, and let's just say for this case, Jadarian Price in Seattle, yes, the opportunity is there with Kenneth Walker out the door. Yes, Sharps is hurt. Yes, George Halani does not inspire any sort of competition, no matter what coaches say about him. But you still have to have the talent. And that's where I question a little bit. If Jadarian Price was that good, this is my Roschon Johnson comp. If he was that good, why didn't he take Love off the field more? Now, the answer is simply because Love is that dude. And that's fine. Bijan was that dude at Texas. And everyone was, oh, well, if Roschon hadn't had Bijan, he would have been, you would have heard so much more about him. Well, if Roschon, had been in this class, he would have been the RB. Okay, but then the NFL said you're not great. And then they put Kyle Monungai in there, and Kyle Monungai took his job. So I'm not completely out on Jadarian Price. Please don't hear me say, don't draft Jadarian Price. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying if he winds up in Seattle, I still think he belongs in the second round. I don't know that I would take him in the first round. There are players like an Eli Stowers. There are players like a Denzel Boston, potentially some of these wide receivers, if they get really early draft capital, that I would consider taking over some of these running backs. It's just not the strongest class. So I do have Coleman, Price, and Johnson is my all 3 in my kind of could be the RB2. And I think one of them will be the RB2 in this class. I think all of them are early to mid second round picks. And that's where I would be targeting them in the draft here in about a month. The next 3 guys that I have on my big board is Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, both from Penn State, and then Mike Washington Jr. I have Singleton right ahead of Allen. I think his profile fits the NFL just a little bit better than Allen's does. I know I wrote an article last week and I got some comments on it about, well, Penn State sucked and they had a shit season and like you can't draft those guys. Like, guys, there are so many players that play for shit teams that end up being great in the NFL. Tyreek Hill didn't even go to a Division I college, and for a while he was the number one wide receiver for years with Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think you have to worry as much about, oh, well, he went to Penn State and they were terrible. Like, good players come from bad teams all the time. So Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, I'm struggling with them, not because Penn State had a terrible season. I'm struggling because I can't really separate the two. Like, they both have some intangibles that I like. They both have some things I'm like, it could work, but like neither one's a super great pass catcher. So they're both kind of in that, what are they really going to give you place? So for me, with Allen and with Singleton, I'm in like the mid to late second round. And I'll be honest, I'm going to probably wait for whoever takes one off the board and I'll just take the other one. The guy that I'm most interested in out of this next group, though, is Mike Washington Jr. And I know it's the underwear Olympics, like guys just running in spandex out of a track stance. Like, why don't they run the 40 in pads? It just drives me crazy. So run the 40 in pads, and that's the most comped speed that you're going to get to the NFL. And there's still no one chasing you, and there's still no one, you're not breaking arm tackles. So Mike Washington Jr. did run really fast. And that's helpful. That is good information to have. He's an interesting prospect because I think there is a possibility he winds up going ahead of Allen and Singleton in the real draft. We're going to find out a lot, of course, over that draft weekend, and that's going to dictate, I think, a lot of our opinions about where these guys are ultimately going to be drafted in your rookie draft. But Mike Washington Jr. is an interesting prospect because the speed is already there, even if it's in his his spandex and not in his pads. Dude's quick, and that does translate to the NFL. So I think there's going to be some teams that will take a flyer on him. I think he's a day 2 pick in round 3, but it's very possible he winds up in round 4. So we're going to see. But that's how I have this order right now. Is kind of the next group of players is Jonah Coleman, Emmett Johnson, Jadarian Price, and then Singleton, Katron Allen, and Mike Washington. So those are 6 names that I think you should start to research, start to look into, and certainly try to take some information from their college tape and see where you think that's going to translate. Before we get into the wide receivers, just want to talk really quickly about some of these mock drafts that I've seen. I think when you guys take a look and you all listen to podcasts, you read it, you read articles, you're watching stuff on YouTube. I do think it's important to take away some information from some of these mock drafts from NFL.com, right? I'm not talking about rookie dynasty mock drafts. I'm talking about from the real NFL mock drafts, because I do think a lot of what you can read and pull out of that, they're just small little tidbits, but start to look for patterns, right? Start to look for patterns, and not necessarily like, oh, does so and so have this guy mocked to the same team as that sports writer? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, are you looking when somebody says a running back, a wide receiver is going to go to this team? Is there a path to playing time there? Is there somebody who says, okay, Jadarian Price is going to go to the Seahawks? The Seahawks in this is probably not the best example because the Seahawks are probably taking a running back. But are the Saints, are they the ones that are all getting mocked a running back? Because that's probably not who you want. They just paid Travis Etienne $52 million. I don't think there's a trade market for Alvin Kamara. So ultimately, what does that mean? If Kamara's on this team, Kamara's the RB2, unless he retires from football. If Kamara's on the Saints, he's probably the RB2, and whoever this rookie is, because we've seen it. We've seen Devin Neal. We've seen, gosh, my brain just went blank. This is when I need Kendall. Whoever the kid was that my brain's blanking on right now that had all the opportunity in the world and kept getting injured. So it's like, I think when you look at some of these mock drafts, start to see, like, are people being mocked to places where they could actually play? Is there an opportunity for someone to get onto the field? And I think that's where you start to say, okay, this is probably a player, even though he's been mocked 2 or 3 different NFL teams, that the writers believe, hey, this is a good enough player that he's probably going to slot in as the RB2 somewhere. Houston would be an interesting place. I know people like Woody Marks a lot, and David Montgomery just got signed. But Houston would be an interesting place. Could one of these guys beat Woody Marks for a spot? Possibly. I don't know. I like Woody Marks personally, but it is possible, that there's teams like that, right? Detroit, They just signed Pacheco. Pacheco's good. He's not great. He's not going to take away from Gibbs. So I think that would be an interesting landing spot for some of these running backs as well, right? Let's talk about some wide receivers. Look, it's pretty easy to say that Taysom and Lemon are the big three. We all know that. I think the next group is Cooper Jr., Concepcion, and Denzel Boston. That seems to be the consensus right now for guys that the NFL seems to like. If you start to see some of the tweets about so-and-so is coming in on a top 30 visit, I think Casey Concepcion was on 2 visits this week for top 30. Denzel Boston was in with the Niners this week. So if that happens, rest in peace, Ricky Pearsall. As much as I hate to say that, but you start to see some of these guys that are going on a top 30 visit. You're not going on a top 30 visit if you're not getting picked in the first 2 days. You're just not. So what I want to talk through here really quickly is Elijah Surratt, Chris Bell, Jeremy Bernard, Zachariah Branch. These are really interesting names in the second round because I don't think that they're going to be back end of the first round. Now, they could. These are some names that could sneak into the 10, 11, 12 spot. I would have most of these players. I'll be honest. Chris Bell, I really like, but the injury history, I think, is really going to dictate what his actual NFL draft capital turns out to be. But Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, Zachariah Branch from Georgia, and Elijah Surratt from Indiana, if they are on the board at the 201, 202, 203, I am pulling the trigger there, and I would probably take all 3 of those players ahead of the RB2 in the class, unless it's a great landing spot. You can start to see and hear the pattern in my voice. I'm just not stoked on this running back class. I'm not. I've got a question that I'm going to get to here in a little bit about trades. Personally, if I'm looking at this running back class, I would try and trade a second for a veteran versus some of these rookies. Now, some of the rookies, like, I would take a shot on, but I would go we play Dynasty in a 2-3 year window. I would go take a 2 or 3 year window of a David Montgomery, for example, who just signed with Houston. I would take 2 years of David Montgomery over some of these running backs, especially if the path to playing time isn't good. We've seen what Monty can do. He's a good player. It's not going to be the same as it was in Detroit, but it's still going to be good enough. There's going to be touchdowns in his locker. So Elijah Surratt, Chris Bell, Jeremy Bernard, Zachariah Branch. These are 4 names that I think we should be paying attention to, both in the rookie drafts as well as in the real NFL draft. Chris Bell's big. He's strong. It's a Debo light kind of comparison. There's a lot of yak there. He's had some injury history at Louisville. I think if he doesn't have that injury history, he's probably honestly going in that Denzel Boston at kind of back of the first round. That's probably where he would wind up. So I think he's a player that you might get a value on in the early second round because people are going to be scared away because of that injury history. Now, again, the NFL might be as well. So we'll see what that draft capital looks like. Elijah Surratt had a phenomenal season coming out of Indiana. All the Indiana guys did, national championship and Big Ten title. But he's a player that I really like that I think also could sneak into the end of the first round of your rookie draft. So if he's available in the second, I would pull the trigger on him as well. He profiles as a number 2 wide receiver. He can play in the slot. I think he's a good pass catching wide receiver. He's got good hands. But he's a player that I think could be an interesting player as a number 2, a true number 2. I say this because I think it's a possibility. The Colts just moved Michael Pittman. They paid Alec Pierce the bag. They have Josh Downs, but I think the Colts could be a team that take a wide receiver to be the number 2 there with Alec Pierce, and Surratt could fit their bill and fit their brand. So I think he's an interesting name to look for Indianapolis. He would be a really, really interesting player, in my opinion, if he winds up on the Colts. There's a lot of other teams I think that he would fit as well. The obvious answer is whoever goes to Miami is going to be rising up draft boards. It's very possible Miami takes 2 wide receivers in this class. I think they could take one of Tate, Tyson, or Lemon as early as 11. And I think it's very possible they take a second or a third round wide receiver. So Chris Bell, Jeremy Bernard, Zachariah Branch, Elijah Surratt could also wind up in Miami. And if they wind up there, that to me would be a really, really great landing spot for Malik Willis and obviously for these players' values. Jeremy Bernard, Zachariah Branch, both SEC guys, SEC, big games, big speed. Can take the top off of defense. I worry a little bit about Bernard, just because I think he's fast, but is he the best route runner? I don't think so. So I think there's some question marks there, but the 205, 206 is definitely a place where I could see you targeting a player like Jeremy Bernard or even Zachariah Branch. Let's get into a question here. Wicked Pompano, good to see you, man. He says, good evening, fam. Phil, do you find you have better success or chances at taking your guy in these later rounds or trying to move second picks in a package for a future second in 2027? It's a good question. I'll leave it up so people can see it if they're watching the show. I think it depends on when you're in the second half of the second round. To me, that's almost call your shot time. The third round is completely dart throws, and I think that's where you're just scooping up as many running backs and tight ends as you possibly can. But I am almost always a draft for best player available than I am draft for need. So I'll answer the first part of the question of like taking my guy. I'm always going to take the player that I think has the highest resale value, right? Kendall and I are day traders. That's really what we do with Dynasty is we are going to constantly acquire players. Most of what we acquire doesn't wind up on our roster. We acquire it so that we can flip it. So I think if you're looking at resale value, that's where you want to take the shot on some of these guys. Can they work out for you for a year? Absolutely. Like Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins was a middle of the second round pick last year. Obviously not Christian Kirk. It was Nico. Tank got the injury. They drafted Jalen Noel. It took a while for Higgins to fill in that wide receiver 2 role. I think Higgins is going to be another good. He's going to have another good season. I think he's going to be a good player. He's not going to be the one there unless Nico just misses a season. So I think he's a good example of good player, good talent. Can I flip him for something more? Yes. This year, I will say this. This is the year that I'm trying to trade out or down from the second half of the second round and on to get picks in 27. 27 is a stronger class. And I'll say this is going to kind of go into my 2-minute drill tonight. So I don't want to take away from the 2-minute drill, but the 27 quarterback class is loaded. And so I think if you can get picks off your roster this year, target the managers who don't have a lot of picks that might want to pick and are willing to move a pick next year, that's probably what I would do, especially if you're starting to get to a point in the draft where you're saying, hey, the ceiling might not be super high, or hey, this guy just got drafted by Detroit as a wide receiver. Like, that's not where you want to wind up with Amon-Ra and Jamison Williams and Isaac Tesla. Like, that's not a pick that I want. If if your guy is this wide receiver and you're like, oh man, I got to get this guy, and he winds up playing for the Lions, I'm trading out of that pick. So I hope that answers your question. I am a big fan this year, and I'll talk about this because it's kind of dovetails off of that answer. I am a big fan this year of trying to consolidate picks. I don't think this is the deepest draft class. I was listening to 2 different podcasts actually earlier today. One was the Fantasy Footballers and the other was the Yahoo Monday Mock Draft podcast. And they pretty much have been saying the same thing on those podcasts for the last couple of weeks. Not the deepest draft class. Talent is very high at the top end. It's stacked at the top end. Next year's draft class is loaded. So I talked about this a couple of weeks ago in the 2-minute drill on the show. I said, if you are at the 9 through 12 in your league, I would do one of 2 things. I would package to try to get inside the top 8, because if you're inside the top 5, you're getting one of the big 3 wide receivers, Jeremiah Love or in Superflex Mendoza, and that's the premium talent. But then there's that next group of 3 who I think right now is Omar Cooper Jr., Casey Concepcion, and Denzel Boston at the wide receiver position. I'll throw Kenyon Sadiq in that mix. So if you can get into the top 8, I think that's where you want to be, because I think the draft in Superflex starts at the 106, and I think the draft in single quarterback starts at the 105, because the first 4 picks is going to be Love and the 3 wide receivers. The order can change, but that's what it's going to be. So I would try to trade up. If you can't trade up, people aren't going to move, or you don't have the capital, that's fine. I would target and I did this last night, and the guy wants way too much for it. So unfortunately, I tried to take my own advice, and it just didn't work. And that's okay. It's not going to happen in every league. But if you have the 111, 112, I would target the manager that's got 2 early seconds and see if he wants to trade up and grab those 2 seconds. Because I think what you're gonna find is it's the same pool of players, right? We talk about it in redraft formats. We talk about it in startup drafts, kinda that flat tier. I don't think it's a flat tier because it's obviously different positions, so it's not like all the wide receivers are the same as all the running backs, but I think it's gonna be the same group of guys. I don't see unless there's a crazy, NFL draft capital player that we're not talking about as a second rounder already that suddenly emerges out of nowhere and is like, "Oh, that's the 201." Like, okay, sure, maybe, but like I don't see it as of today, and I don't think a lot of people in the industry see it. So, if you've got the 111 and the 112, I would honestly, especially if you're a team that could use the extra pick, maybe you're not rebuilding, but maybe you could use the extra pick. Obviously, if you're drafting at the 111 or 112, your team's probably pretty good unless you acquired that pick from whoever won the league. But if that's your first round pick, then you probably are pretty good. I would take the shot on 2 seconds versus just the 112 because I think you're going to have 2 dart throws instead of 1. So that's some trade strategy of things that I'm looking at. And I think there are some places in the second round where you might be able to do that as well. Take the 205 and see if you can't get the 209 and the 210. So just some things to keep in mind. Speaking of looking ahead, look, I understand looking ahead can be a little scary. There's a lot of unknowns. You're going to trade away, a big player and you're going to get 2 firsts, for that player. And then all of a sudden those 2 firsts become the 111 the next 2 consecutive years. And you're just not stoked on that. Has happened to me. It's probably happened to all of you. But I say this, there are several positions next year that are going to be hot. One of them is quarterback, and getting ahead of it now, that to me is the play. And assuming that you're not a contender, I would consider selling some players for a 27 first. I'll give you a real life example. I'm in a super flex league right now where I have Bucky Irving. My team, I normally I like to get through my startup drafts and kind of evaluate what my team's ceiling is before I decide to make any moves at all. The quarterback market, I almost always do auction drafts because snake is difficult. You just don't get access to the whole board, and the trading is fine, but I like an auction format for a dynasty startup because you have access to all the players and you can really figure out your roster construction in a pretty equitable way. So the quarterback market in that startup draft, this is year 2 of that league. It was outrageous. I mean, guys, Bo Nix went for more than Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert did. Bo Nix went for like $30 more than Justin Herbert did. I wound up with Justin Herbert. So I only got Justin Herbert. And when I looked at my team, I was like, man, my wide receiver room is loaded. My running back room is real thin. My quarterback room is Justin Herbert and nobody else. So I made the decision to go ahead and sell Amon-Ra for 2 firsts and a second. I made the decision to sell McConkey for 2 firsts and a second. So I got a haul right after the draft for my top 2 guys. Still have Devonta Smith, still have Jalen Waddle on that roster. But I have Bucky, and my RB2 right now is Jalen Warren. So I'm looking at my roster saying, I just don't have the ceiling. I won't call it a full rebuild because I have some pieces, but I'm in a mini rebuild. And I'm considering, I just put the offer out there today, or yesterday, I should say, and followed up on it today. I'm going to look at taking Bucky and trying to get a 27 first for him because the guy that I've asked for the first back from from Bucky, he has the 101. He'll take Jeremiah Love. He has nobody else on his roster. His running back room is Braylon Allen. And I mean, it's bad. It's really bad. So to me, it's like, can I use that on a running back next year? Yes. Can I win this year with my current roster? No. Do I need a quarterback? I need 2, in all honesty. I have Justin Herbert, and then I've got Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston and backups. I don't have a viable starter. You don't have to play a quarterback in Superflex in that QB spot. Everyone does, but like you don't have to. And so I'm looking at my team saying, would I rather get the 108 for Bucky this year? Because that's what I'm getting offered. And there's no running back that can replace Bucky. And I might just keep him if the offer's not right. Or am I saying, look, the 27 class is loaded. I already have 4 first-round picks next year. 3 firsts, 3 firsts, 3 seconds with what I've acquired from my own picks and then the trades that I made. So I'm looking at that class going, that could be my quarter. I could turn Bucky into a quarterback and still have plenty of space to draft running backs. I've got good wide receivers. So that's a real life example of, do I want to get something out of this year's class, or am I just looking a year ahead? Because could Bucky resurge? Yeah, of course he could. But Kenneth Gainwell's a good player. He's a really good player. I had a guy last night offer me Kenneth Gainwell straight up for Jalen Warren, because he's got Rico Dowdle and I have Bucky. And I sent the guy a message. I was like, look, I'm just not interested in this trade right now. I might be moving Bucky. I get the idea of like, hey, control the Tampa backfield. Hey, control the Pittsburgh backfield. So in that sense, like I would love to get Warren off the roster, but it doesn't help me. So I'm looking ahead to next year because that's where I see the talent pool really, really expanding. Whereas this year, if you're outside the 108, eh, it's a lot of the same archetype of guy. So hope that helps if you're trying to get ahead next year, and obviously if you're trying to start looking at next year's class. So speaking of next year's class, I'm going to give you 2 dynasty buys tonight. First one is low hanging fruit, so that's why I've given you 2. Look, Devonta Smith is my dynasty buy, but you have to do it now. You have to do it right now. AJ Brown, I don't know. He might get traded this offseason, but he's not going to be an Eagle next year. He will not be on this roster. So Smith's going to inherit the wide receiver 1 role. I think Howie Roseman is one of the smartest GMs in the entire NFL. He is always a year ahead, and he's playing chess while other people are playing checkers. And I am not an Eagles fan, believe me, but I respect the guy. And sometimes you just got to respect the you got to respect the job and respect what people can do. So I think it's very real, and I heard this on that Yahoo Dynasty show I was listening to today. I think it's very real Howie Roseman drafts a wide receiver this year. There's talks about Omar Cooper Jr. being that player to potentially replace A.J. Brown. So I have Zay Flowers on a roster right now. I've offered Zay Flowers in a third for Devonta Smith. I don't think it's that. I think that's a fair trade. I don't think it's that far off, but I could bump that up a little bit if you truly believe Smith's going to be the number 1. I think if you have the 104, if you have the 105 in this year's draft, look, I like Jordan Tyson a lot. I'm very high on Jordan Tyson. I think I have it Tate, Tyson, Lemon. Personally, that's my rankings right now. I know a lot of people have Tyson as the 3rd guy of the big 3 because of the injury history, but I talked about it last week on the show. Tyson's the best route runner. Tyson's the most complete wide receiver of the 3. I think the injury history is going to knock him a little bit. I do think it's very possible he is the 3rd wide receiver of the big 3 taken in the draft. But I think if he's healthy, he's potentially the best one. I think if the 104, 105 is a pick that you have and Tyson scares you, because that's probably who's going to be available when you're on the clock, assuming you're not in a super flex league. And even if you are, Mendoza's probably going to be the 102. I would offer the 104 or the 105 for Devonta Smith. I think that trade probably gets done. If you need to add a 3rd on top because somebody values him more, then like, fine, you'll never miss that 3rd. But I would trade for Devonta Smith, and I would do it right now because the news this summer is going to be A.J. Brown on a constant carousel until something happens. And even if he stays, Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown have both been wide receiver 1s in the same season with Jalen Hurts, and A.J. Brown's not going to be around after this year. So even if Brown is an Eagle this season, get a year ahead of it. I'm going to give you one more dynasty buy. This is my dynasty buy 2.0 for the night. In Superflex, we just kind of talked about it. If you need a quarterback, and we always do in Superflex, you always need quarterbacks, buy 2027 first. I wrote in my show sheet, buy in all caps and in bold. Buy those 27 firsts. Sell if you are in the 109 to 112, if you're in the 109 to 112, and there's just if you don't want Ty Simpson, and there's no one there that or you don't want Carson back, and there's no one there that really truly improves your team, you're just kind of drafting a guy to draft a guy, sell it. Sell a late first this year to someone who wants it and get yourself a 27 first and hope and pray that it is higher than the 9 to 12. And it could be. And if it is, that is a great trade. Let me give you some names of the quarterbacks that are eligible for the 27 draft. Dante Moore. He would have been the 102 this year. He didn't want to play for the Jets. I think it would be hilarious if you wind up getting drafted by the Jets next year, but that's literally why he went back to Oregon. He did not want to be a Jet, and that's where he would have been drafted. I'm going to say it because he's coming out, and it's going to be crazy, but a lot of mixed opinions. Arch Manning. TBD on his ceiling. But this is a really important year for him at Texas. So Arch Manning's going to be in this draft class, and he's going to be fine. Is he going to be his uncle's? Probably not, but he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. Julian Sayin, quarterback at Ohio State. Trinidad Chambliss, quarterback at Ole Miss. Jaden Mavia, and I probably butchered his last name, Mavia, USC. Lenoris Sellers, South Carolina, and there are already guys talking about 4 of these guys being first round NFL capital by the 2027 firsts. It is very possible that 2 or 3 of these quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3 because Arizona, the Jets are absolutely going to need and will probably take a quarterback, and both of them should be drafting 1, 2. And it's highly possible that the Dolphins, if they don't like Willis, are drafting that high. Browns could be drafting that high again. So there are definitely teams that are quarterback needy that are going to be early. And this is a loaded quarterback class. So that's my Dynasty 2.0. Take those late firsts, flip them for a 27 first. At worst, break even on your money. At best, you'll end up moving up in the draft. It's a short show tonight. It's always a little shorter when I don't have my buddy here to bounce some ideas and talk some football with. So if you got more questions, I'm happy to hang out for a minute or two and take some more questions. If you've got real trade offers happening, shoot those to me. We can talk through those. I am going to be putting together, I already am compiling, but I will continue to add to the trade show is coming up. I know we've got a lot of people asking, what should I be buying? What should I be selling? Should I be trying to move up in my draft? Should I be selling, draft picks for veterans? So I'm putting together a huge doc with all kinds of real life trade scenarios from my leagues, from stuff that people DM me. So if you've got trades over the next couple of weeks, we will be breaking all of that down here on the show. We are only a month out from the NFL draft. We are super excited about that. And of course, we want to get you ready to not only dominate that draft, but to go ahead and win championships this year. So got a question in the chat here. Is pairing of Tyler Shuck and the 107 enough to pay for a possible top 3 2027 pick? Always difficult to project that it's a top 3 pick. I think if you are doing what most people do and you're looking at a roster and you're going down the roster going, yes, no, is it, is this team really have the ceiling? Does this team really have the depth? If somebody were to get injured all of a sudden, Amon-Ra is their wide receiver 1. Sure, that's amazing. But if Amon-Ra, we don't talk about injuries, but if Amon-Ra is no longer the wide receiver 1, this team's screwed. I think a lot of people like Tyler Shuck. He's got a rookie contract. I don't see a world where the Saints are going to take a quarterback this year. In fact, I think they just signed somebody to a 1-year backup deal. Yeah, Zach Wilson. So you can't tell me they're excited about competition there. I think ultimately Tyler Shuck is a good quarterback. I think I have him. I don't have my rankings in front of me, but if my memory's right, I think I have him at like quarterback 18 or 19 in my rankings. The 107 is a good pick this year. It's not a top 5 pick, obviously. So you're not getting one of the 3, in a super flex, you're not getting one of the big 3 receivers, Love or Mendoza. But I do really like Casey Concepcion and Omar Cooper Jr. a lot. And I think, assuming they get the draft capital, they should be 6 or 7. So I think that's a really interesting pick. I would absolutely make the offer. I would be prepared to possibly add something more on top, because again, if you're looking at a roster saying yes, no, down all the names of like, is it, and when I say yes, I mean, like, is this guy going to be on the field scoring points? Is he a starter? Is he a flex? Because that's what I do. And then when you go, no, I'm talking about like, okay, he's got, Joe Horn Jr. Like, okay, great. Like, that's not fantasy relevant. You know what I mean? Like, if he's got Wandale and he's got Amon-Ra and he's got George Pickens, those are 3 yeses. But then after that, if there's no one that on a bye week can fill in, those are no's. The manager of that team is also probably doing the same thing and probably saying, oh, okay, my pick's probably going to be pretty early. If I'm going to sell it now, I'm going to need a haul for it. So I think you can absolutely offer Tyler Shuck in the 107 for an early first. Just be prepared that it might get kicked back and you may need to add something more, especially if that manager is thinking about his own roster, which he probably is. But yeah, really good question. Throw some more in there if y'all are still tuned into the show. Happy to talk through it with everybody and give you all some advice. I think I might have a DM on Sleeper of a question. And of course, I'm on my Sleeper on the desktop is not always the fastest. On my phone, it works great. It's definitely more of a mobile app thing. But Wicked Pompano, man, you got some more for me? You always got good questions. Jamie, you're quiet tonight. Jamie Pirog, what's up, my dude? Always good to see you, brother. He's been a great supporter of the show, especially these last couple of weeks. I don't know if Rasta's still hanging out or not. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap the show. Again, we will be back next Tuesday, as we always are. We will be talking some more rookies. We will start to sprinkle in some of those trades. I think it is going to be the draft's going to be here quick, so I think it's going to be kind of a fast and furious push here. Start looking at your roster. Start thinking about some of those trade questions. DM me at P Ruskin. Please like and subscribe to the show. You can always follow our Discord channel as well. We do interact in there. We do. I was a ton of trade questions in our Discord. We were answered some of those earlier today. So yes, please get those trades ready because we are going to be breaking down all kinds of trades over the next couple of weeks as we get ready for the NFL draft and your following rookie drafts. For all of us here at the Get Right Fantasy Network and for myself, Phil Ruskin of the Extra Point, appreciate y'all being here on a Tuesday night. Talk to y'all soon. We out.